much better. Cause I, good poop. Oh, I should.
So what was the urgent message?
Where? The mail? Garbage. I threw away most of it. So,
David was still in bed when I got there.
wasn't up for lunch. So what'd you do? You said, why are you gonna be in bed all morning? Get your ass up. It's not very good for him. He's just gonna lay around till he can't move. It's not gonna help him. He doesn't understand that.
He obviously hadn't shaved, so I shaved him.
You should have him do it in front of you and see that he can do it. Way cheaper.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Rotary Club of Seattle, where we are working to build healthy communities. My name is Jan Levy, and I'm still your president for 4.5 more months.
That's just like
As we begin our program, would you please review and reflect for just a minute on our land acknowledgement, which is on the screen. At this time, we have a new musical group to introduce to you today, and they're going to be performing. It's the Opera Bells, the Rotary Opera Bells. Vicki Oxley and Linda Ruff, and they will be accompanied by Karen Kajita, and they are going to treat us to an aria from Puccini's Gianni Schicchi. Try saying that fast. A Lament of Love, which is perfect for Valentine's month. So Linda and Vicki and Karen.
Now, King FM lists the third most popular opera aria as Puccini's O mio Babino from Gianni Schicchi, sung by the lovelorn Loretta, daughter in a family which is feuding with that of her lover. Renuccio. So in this number, Loretta beseeches her father to permit her to marry him despite this. And we sing it in its original Italian. Maybe you can sort of follow along. We'll loosely translate it. Oh, my beloved Papa, twice. I love him. Let's go to him in Porta Rosa to get his ring. But if you don't let me love him, I'll just go to the bridge, the Ponte Vecchio, and throw myself over and into the river Arno and die. Papa, have mercy, have mercy. Oh mio bambino caro, mi piace bello,
Is this real?
andare porta rossa a comperar l'anello. Sì, sì, ci voglio andare. E se la passi indarno, vorrei su ponte vecchio, ma per buttarmi in anno, mi struggo e mi tormento. Oh Dio, vorrei morir. Papo pietà, pietà. Papo pietà, pietà.
On? Am I on? Yeah. Good heavens. Thank you. That was gorgeous. Thanks to Vicky, Linda, and Karen. What a great way to start the year of the horse, or Lunar New Year, which I think starts this week, right? I also want to thank Patty Chow, Barton DeLacy, and Erica Thrash Saul for serving as our greeters today, and to Dan Mead Smith for our meeting reporting. We have some visiting Rotarians and guests with us today. I'm going to call all your names. Will you stand as I call your names and remain standing till I'm done, and we'll hold our applause till the very end. Dave Baskerville from the Madison, Wisconsin Rotary. Tennille Jeffrey Simmons, Scott Moline, Ryan Hansen, Catherine Gooding, Deb Brandy, Chris Reykdal, Casey Ave, Karen Kajita, and Hayes Mott, who has just submitted her application for membership. Welcome, everyone. And did I miss anybody? And I can't see you. Felicity Wang. Welcome, everybody. So today, we are going to continue to focus on education, which is a cornerstone of a healthy community. Our last program explored higher education, but today we're turning to the foundation, K through 12, with Washington State Superintendent of Public Instruction, Chris Reykdal. As I began preparing for today, I realized something a bit embarrassing. I had no idea what the Superintendent of Public Instruction actually does. It turns out you do quite a lot. The superintendent leads the Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction, or OSPI, the state agency that supports more than 1 million students across the state of Washington. From setting statewide policies and standards, overseeing funding, to ensuring compliance with federal and state law, to guiding policy on everything from early learning to graduation requirements, this role sits at the very center of how public education works in our state. First elected in 2017, Chris is now serving his third term as our state's 16th superintendent. He's a former teacher, soccer coach, school board director, state legislator, executive in our community and technical college system, and a proud public school student himself. He brings a rare and full circle perspective to his work. Under his leadership, OSPI efforts have focused on equity, transparency, accountability, and keeping students at the center of every decision. His full bio is on your tables. Please join me in welcoming Chris Reykdal to the podium.
Thank you. Well, good afternoon. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with folks today. My wife told me yesterday it is the year of the fire horse, and I said, well, tell me about that. So she did a little reading, and I said, can you summarize it for me? I treat her like an AI bot now, you know, Kim. She said, you're going to have a rough first half of your year, and then it's going to be awesome in the second half of the year. I said, all that came out of my zodiac sign? Am I like, she said, yeah. So here's to the start of trouble right here at the Seattle Rotary. So it's great to see you all, and thank you all for the work. You know, at the heart of Rotary International and the United States and local clubs is service, and that's what's so special about this. So I was tasked today by a few folks to be brutally honest around the state of where we are and what's hopeful, and then what might be possible for us in education. So I want to do that, and I will definitely leave time at the end for some questions, as long as they're hard questions. I say that because I answer the easy one, and my Chief of Staff, Tennille Jeffrey Simmons, is here for the hardest questions. So yes, how do we pay for all this? I say, I don't know, Tennille, tell me. So I do have a clicker, which could be trouble, but we're going to try to rip through these here pretty fast. I asked one of our management analysts, I said, can you just kind of grab the meat of what we've been talking about for months and months and months in this state, from everything from financial distress all the way to student learning struggles and some successes, so I can boil it down for our Rotarians and then talk a little bit about where we're going. So that's the goal here today. Here's the biggest struggle that you are going to experience as a champion of education, if in fact you are, and I believe most of you are, for sure. In public education, we are the product of love. 5 years before we get them, things happen around 4th of July, Christmas, Valentine's Day. And a lot less of that happened 5 years ago. So these are your birth rates in the state of Washington. This is a national phenomenon around the country. The United States as a whole is kind of following the pattern of Western Europe with declining birth rates. Folks are waiting to get married, if at all. They are waiting to have children, if at all. They are waiting to be homeowners, if at all. This city is like the symbolic representation of the American experience here. Young, highly educated, not necessarily interested in children, can barely afford their own lives with the cost of living without having a family. What that turns into for us is that over a period of time, we will just continue to see fewer and fewer enrollments in our schools. And you are in a state that actually does fund students. We talk about this weird prototypical school thing. Don't even worry about it. We fund students, and when we get 400 of them or so, we say that's a typical elementary, and that's what we push out. There's basic dollars for basic services, and then kids with disabilities get extra dollars. Career and tech education gets additional dollars. Migrant and bilingual students have extra dollars that come with them. We are a state that tries to drive more money on an equity-based concept, but it isn't very much money compared to the country, to be candid with you. So the whammy here for whether it's the Seattle School District or anywhere else is as you decline enrollments, the state is going to send you less resource, period. There's no way around that unless the legislature funds the way higher ed is funded in our state, which is they give them an appropriation, a base amount. And whether they enroll 4,000 students or 4,100 students in a college, that's their base amount. The marginal gain they get's a little tuition, but their base is set, not in K-12. When we're growing enrollments, school districts have more resource. When they're shrinking enrollments, they lose resource. So that's kind of rule number one on why you constantly read about school districts saying, I'm in financial distress, even though I've been cutting. Here's how it turns out for us. If you just focus on the top line, those are your 11th graders now. There's 87,000 of them. The bottom line are your first graders. There's 73,000 of them. You can do the math there. As that little tiny thing moves through the system, the numbers, and the big graduating classes keep leaving us, this system will continue to get smaller. Now, this is where I interject and tell you that's about 70% of the enrollment story, birth rate. About a third of it is a combination of homeschool and private school. And that's been very volatile after the recession or after the pandemic and really stable since then. So private schools like public plummeted the year of the closure because most private schools closed down too. And then they recovered. Homeschool, however, shot up during the pandemic and it's been slowly declining until now it's kind of leveled off and is finally kind of on its normal trajectory of a 1 or 2% growth a year. So we're a relatively stable state right now, but you know, if you leave nothing else here, just know your publics have to keep managing to less resource going forward as a state appropriation for sure. So here's the other dilemma that you hear about from school districts all the time. And I promise you I'll get past money because we still have $20 billion, y'all. So you should be able to achieve a lot of success with kids, which we do, even if you don't have more money. But I want to give you the dynamic on why you're reading in the paper financial distress. We were 45% of the budget, 44% of the budget when the last state Supreme Court told the legislature, you're in contempt. You are not following the court's order. You're not funding schools adequately. The legislature invested dollars. Compensation was a big part of that, by the way. A lot of people say all the money went to comp. We are an 85% human business. So we either hired more staff to support kids, particularly school psychs, nurses, counselors, mental health specialists, lots of wraparound supports, and people got paid market wages finally. That peaked right after they did the big investment. So you saw we peaked at just under 52%, and it's been slipping ever since then. So the thing that isn't very popular with some of the folks I hang with is to say Democrats in the state care deeply, and they care so deeply that they've driven a massive revenue growth in our state system, a great economy in our state. We are still a high destination state. We're 5th or 6th in the nation for net move-ins versus move-outs. But that system tends to generate a lot of revenue during high price inflation because we tax purchases in the state, not income. So the state has generated a lot of money and no one should claim otherwise. They've disproportionately put that into human services for the last 8 years. It's growing much, much faster than early learning investments, K-12 investments, and especially higher ed investments. So that's the third reason you should be thinking about this. Districts are losing enrollment, mostly to birth rate, a little bit to homeschool and private school, and the state itself is definitely divesting slowly as a share of the overall state budget. Okay, you say, so what? We're a wealthy state and we spend $18,000 a kid, and isn't that good enough? I sorted this for you based on the percentage of our private economy that we put back into our public schools. That's what it's sorted on. We're ranked 40th in the nation. There are only 10 states who turn their private economy into less revenue in their schools than the state of Washington. Now, we're a fairly wealthy state, so it shouldn't be that we're near the top. But maybe average? What I didn't do is sort the third column for you, which is inflation adjusted and regional cost of living adjusted funding per student. And if I had done that, you would see us right at the national average. Not high, not low. So one of the first myths I always have to bust is we spend more money per kid than anywhere else in the country and we're below Mississippi. We're going to get to Mississippi before I'm done here, y'all. There's good news in Mississippi and there's troubling news in Mississippi that we should get the facts about. So as a share of what we call effort in the effort index, we're relatively low in the country. But as a share of funding per student adjusted for regional costs, we're pretty average. Not terrible, not great. Here it is in a linear representation. Right after the court made a decision, does this work? Oh my goodness. You see this little spot right here? We got so close. We got so close right here when the court said you must fund basic education in your paramount constitutional duty. The legislature added money. We got awfully close to the national average. And as soon as the pandemic hit and the legislature was released, if you will, from the court jurisdiction, the divestment continued. And here we are again, kind of pulling backwards at a faster clip than the rest of the country is. Now, that doesn't seem like much, 2.58% versus 3.1% of state GDP. It's $4 billion a year. It's $4 billion a year difference if we were sitting at the national average right now. Here is what's happened to the state budget. We adjusted these numbers for you, adjusted for inflation. So as I said, the state budget has clearly grown significantly during the economic boom that we've had. Absolute growth. The last 3 biennium or so, though, adjusted for inflation, the state budget's actually quite flat, the purchasing power. And K-12 as a share of that's shrinking once again. So state's kind of holding its own. Massive drivers are healthcare costs. Absolutely. Think of it as 100,000 higher ed employees, 100,000 K-12 employees, and 100,000 state employees. And the state legislature has to keep funding compensation increases in healthcare because it's all people business stuff. It's all people business. Those of you who run businesses, you've seen your insurance rates the last 4 years. Unbelievable gains. For those of you in the insurance business, congratulations. You're winning. So we also talk about what is this deficit and why does it still exist? Legislature escalated dollars. Sure, they've been on decline, but didn't they close that gap? Didn't they fix the hole long enough? And the truth is 3/4 of all of our gap still is in special ed. Why do we know this? Our federal laws require us to write individualized education programs for kids with disabilities. We figure this out. We write individual plans. Parents are involved. Big communities, support teams and schools are involved. And then you need to fund those plans by federal law, whether the feds give you the money or not. Their obligation, by the way, is 40%. What they actually provide to the state, 15% of the cost. So your state legislature picks up 85% of the cost, or they should. They actually come up short to the point that we spend hundreds of millions of dollars out of those local levies that you're all very excited about voting for every couple of years. Congrats to all of you. We had an incredible night last Tuesday. 95% of all the dollars sought statewide passed at the local level. So the voters get it, which is great, but they also say pretty consistently, how much longer can you tell me I have to do this at the local level when it's a federal civil rights obligation in special ed and the legislature is supposed to fund it? So when we keep coming back saying we're still about $1 billion short of the constitutional obligation, most of it's in special ed. Some of it's transportation, some of it's in this thing we call MSOCs, that's maintenance and supplies. There's definitely a component here of migrant bilingual youth. They have a civil right, a positive civil right to get education, and the state comes up a little short. So we definitely have a little bit of a gap, but I want to scale that for you. You are in a room of smart people who have had a lot of success in your life, and you know that if you're $1 billion short, that's a problem. Let's go get after it. But you still got 19 or $20 billion you got today. And that should still be dynamic. That should still focus on student achievement and student success. So let's get into a little bit of that before Q&A. Let's take, for example, the expectation that we in this state have a public policy that we want 70% of our students to leave high school and get a post-secondary credential. I would argue that number should be higher now. That was set years ago. More than a high school diploma, not everyone to a baccalaureate or professional degree or master's degree, but certainly more than a high school diploma, an industry recognized credential, a technical skill recognized in industry, associate's degrees. All of this stuff matters in our economy. And we, despite the challenges, have a booming international economy that is not going to change as long as China and India are doing what they're doing. This Pacific Rim will continue to be an enormous generator of wealth and opportunity. But we only come up with 62% of those students. We get way more than 70% who start. They try a 2-year, they try a 4-year, they try an apprenticeship program or technical program, and a massive number of them don't finish. We don't have a start problem in this state in post-secondary. We have a finish problem. We have a completion problem. Most of it is not as a result of academic preparation. Students do well early on in our colleges and universities. They struggle to finish because cost eats them up. Record student loan debt, we're up to a couple $1 trillion nationally in debt. That's just the direct loans we know about. That doesn't count home equity that families are borrowing against, which is how the middle class funds higher ed if you don't know that. Most of them are not qualifying for direct loans. Most of them are saying, I'll pull money out of home equity. My retirement funds are, God, let's hope and pray they saved. That's how they're funding this stuff. So we've got work to do. It's in the K-12 space to get more kids, even more kids prepared. Because while we're graduating 85% of them or so, that's 15% of our students that aren't even getting through our hurdle before they even attempt post-secondary. So part of what I want to leave you with is when I think about my role as state superintendent, and when I think about your role in service and all that you've given to your community, yeah, the constitutional duties K-12, but if we're not thinking about early learning in terms of preparation for kids, readiness for kindergarten, and we're not thinking about post-secondary opportunities, I mean, this is like starting a meal, preparing a meal, and never turning on the stove. We can have all the ingredients in there. It can all sit there. It can all be ready to go. But if we pushed 100% of kids to high school graduation and a bunch of them stopped there, this economy in the state of Washington would be in desperate, desperate shape. So think of it as a pre-K, K-12, and a post-secondary conversation always in our state. We have metrics that go beyond test scores. Again, I'll talk about those. We now measure lots of things, including attendance. We measure things like our students accessing dual credit. So are they getting high school, while they're in high school, are they getting college credit and getting that jump start? So we're kind of setting new records every year on this between Running Start, college and the high school, advanced placement, international baccalaureate. We're seeing a surge of families and students say, I'm going to access as much college as I can when the state's paying for it as basic ed to try to shrink that time to degree. This should not be controversial, my friends. This is a little controversial. Some argue preparation. That's not really borne out in the data. We don't see dual credit students go to colleges and universities and struggle academically. Very, very little of that, but there's some. What's really controversial is if you move that achievement level to the high school where we're paying $10,000, $12,000, $14,000 per student, and they only need 2 years to finish at a university instead of 4, that's a business model problem at our universities. So the whole system has to think about how do you get more efficient? How do you get more throughput of students, give them more opportunities, and honor the fact that middle-class families, they want this stuff. They desperately need this stuff because they're not going to make it if they have to take out a $100,000 loan. So they're soaking up all the college credit they can in high school, and then they turn to our university partners and they say, this credit's all going to transfer, right? And for the most part, it's pretty good if it's in the right stuff. But any young person today who says, I want my dual credit to be in a math course where I'm actually learning construction trades. I want to build a tiny house like our Rotarian friend down here has been doing in his community of the partnership with his school district. I want to build houses. So I'm going to go get this and I'm going to get college level algebra or geometry in a construction program. Applied mathematics, none of that stuff is transferring to a university. So the community college is giving away the credit, which is great. It'll fit in a lot of their trades programs. It isn't necessarily moving to the university because we're still in this place that says, oh, that's real world math. But over here, we need to get everyone as close to calculus as possible because those are the skills for the predominant degrees in STEM that we need. And we do need those students. But we haven't closed that mental gap that says if it's about students and particularly self-paying customers in higher ed, they should be able to kind of design the path that makes sense for them that also meets the labor market. We still got a little dissonance where higher ed's saying, can't you just get everybody to do what we've always done? Algebra 1, geometry, algebra 2, pre-calc. That's what we need. That's what we want. And I can show you 30,000 high school seniors who are like, hell no. I did my 3 credits in math. I'm an algebra 2. I scored well on the test. We have a 4-score system, a 4-rank system of our test in 10th grade for mathematics. 1/3 of students in the state of Washington who get the highest scores, a 4 and a 3, 1/3 of them never step on a college campus a year later. This is not a prep problem. This is an affordability challenge for too many families, and that's why they don't go, and that's why they get a couple years in sometimes and don't complete. Okay, let's talk about Mississippi. Golly, this is bludgeoning me everywhere I go. So I tried to come up with the best facts I could for you. Number one, I've known the last 2 state superintendents in Mississippi. They're good people. They've worked their tails off, and they are fundamentally improving reading in early grades in Mississippi. Full stop, fact. That's generally where the media stops covering the story. Anyone here from the Seattle Times? Out yourselves now. Here comes some facts. When we go from 4th grade to 8th grade, something drastically different happens. Washington State, Massachusetts, a few other states continue to make gains relative to our peers across the country. We keep making progress. Mississippi is the poster child, but it's Alabama, it's South Carolina, it's Arkansas, it's Louisiana. It's these other states who hold back a lot of their third and fourth graders. They have what they call retention policies. They forcibly tell families if your kid doesn't meet a certain test score, they're going to repeat the grade. Okay. Seems logical to a lot of people, except researchers go two problems. Number one, they score very well the next year. They're developmentally a year older. They've got a bunch of 10-year-olds taking a test that the rest of the country is giving to 9-year-olds. That's the first problem. But they look great in fourth grade reading. Mississippi truly has only 1 or 2 peers in fourth grade reading right now. Absolutely true. By 8th grade, Mississippi shrinks once again to the very bottom, very near the bottom. And it's not that they didn't teach kids phonemic awareness and phonics and the science of reading. Those kids can sound out complex words. It's that between 4th and 8th grade, we start teaching kids how to put concept to those words. If you can teach a kid to sound out a complex word like psychology that starts with a P in 3rd grade, woohoo! Do they know what the word psychology means? Can they read it in context? Do they have reading comprehension where they can read a passage and then tell you an answer to something? That is a totally different skill set that develops between age 8 and age 12 or 13. So here, I've shown you Washington State, the top blue, the light blue, that's what I'd rather have you focus on right now, because I'm going to show you Mississippi soon. By 8th grade, we have very few folks in other states that are outperforming us in reading. It doesn't mean we're ranked 4th or 5th. It means there's only 4 or 5 states that are statistically outperforming this state in reading. The rest of us are kind of lumped together in the yellow bars. And in an ideal world, everyone would be in the yellow. 4th grade reading should be 4th grade reading around the country. That's why we built national standards. And you can see that statistically over here on the right side, we are outperforming statistically 1/4 to 1/3 of the states. But we're sort of in that yellow box, which is where you would expect developmentally most folks to be. I give you 8th grade reading in Mississippi. I didn't show you the 4th grade numbers, but if I did, you would have seen that our friends in Mississippi in 4th grade would have only had a couple of states right up here beating them. Instead, it's half the states. They are only statistically outperforming 6 or 7 states by 8th grade. You're not reading any of that in the papers. So the other theme I have for you today is stay away from trendy things in education. Every ounce of research says somewhere between 60 and 70% of the outcomes for kids is a function of their family and the stability of their family and their nutrition and the wraparound services. So when Rotarians are out there making those connections and they're building homes and they're building parks and they're giving kids access to food and they're working on healthcare issues, all of the amazing things you do, it matters a ton. But the classroom comes second after family, and it's only 10, 15, 20% of all the outcomes. Seems small, but imagine raising a kid for 13 or 14 years having never gone to school. It would be disastrous of any kind, any school. So we got to kind of reconcile the fact that maybe it is about whole child issues and not just a test score. Especially if the test score says we're going to get kids to learn how to sound out words, look amazing in 4th grade, blast all over the country, shame everyone else, say, be like Mississippi, and have people like me run around to Rotarian clubs and say, Mississippi finally was doing what we were doing for 30 years, which is teaching the science of reading. What Mississippi hasn't gotten to yet is contextual reading for kids in advanced long-form text. They probably will get there. I hope they do. But if you can help me bust the myth that somehow Washington kids can't read, that'd be great. Here's the other reason why. I didn't give you the TIMSS data or the PISA data. These are international exams. They put United States kids as a whole up against our OECD competitors, our global economic competitors. There are only 6 or 7 nations in the world that have better reading scores for their 15-year-olds than the United States. Now, math, ruh-roh. So that leads us to my biggest worry for our kids, outside of their mental health, by the way. It is actually not reading that I worry the most about, though there are student populations we have to really double down on. My biggest worry across the board, universally in the United States and in this state, is mathematical skills. Numeracy in early grades, computational math later on, advanced understanding of algebra concepts, and ultimately data literacy and information literacy. I sincerely tell you, it is a problem. The labor market is moving that way. The economy is moving that way. And we don't seem to think about this as anything but casual. I loved math, but this person, they just didn't get math, so it's okay. The number of families out there who say, don't worry if you're not good at math. I wasn't either. Can you imagine a whole bunch of families saying, don't worry if you can't read. I wasn't a good reader either. We never say that about reading. What does every billboard say in front of every elementary school all summer long? Read to your kids for 20 minutes. Remember, keep reading for your kids. Nobody says do flashcards for 20 minutes every day. I'm begging for this billboard. Can you please, as a Rotary, just buy the numbers for people? Just please do flashcards for 20 minutes every day. The fluency of multiplication, it still matters a ton. It still matters. So here's Washington State. By eighth grade, there's only about 14 states that are statistically outperforming us. So that's pretty darn good, but like not even close to reading. There were only 4 or 5 states that outperform us in eighth grade reading. But by math, we are absolutely in the middle of the pack, somewhere in the middle of this yellow. Here's my friends in Mississippi. So not only do they slip big time in reading, they absolutely didn't get there at all in mathematics. And but the cool part about Mississippi is, again, these dark bars are how many states Mississippi's outperforming. That's a good thing. There's some gains going on. They are definitely starting to translate quality literacy and numeracy into better results, but they're not making that leap into the top tier by any stretch. That's me again. So there's some truth. There's a lot of mythology about reading. We still have work to do with some of our student subgroups. There's an absolute need in mathematics across the board. I will tell you it's a function of time. We don't spend enough time on it. It is partly about learning standards, so we're changing those right now. My other takeaway for you, so what do we do now? Obviously, we have to invest. You're going to ask me questions about income taxes. I can't wait to answer those for you. It's not going to be the whole answer just to get you to the last chapter. What we're going to have to do is have different conversations with families around the role of public education. The outcome is not an entitlement, the access is. That's a hard message to hear. You are a state that's spending $18,000 per kid, and that's why you get pretty darn good results, but you don't get the best results. That's a fact. And we absolutely are not driving our dollars into the communities that need it the most. We have a relatively level system. Progressive systems send a lot more money to high poverty communities than we do. We do a little bit of that with some federal money and some state money, but it's mostly kind of evaporates by the time we do what's called regionalizing our budgets. When we look at it and we say, how are we going to pay a teacher who's trying to afford a house in Seattle versus a teacher trying to afford a house in Mattawa? We send more money to Seattle School District. And it makes sense from a livability standpoint, but when you do the math, divide the money by all the kids, you're like, wait, why is Seattle getting more money than Mattawa? They're high poverty. They got a high migrant population. So is it about equity of housing opportunity and quality teacher in every classroom, or is it about just raw numbers of money based on who you are? These are not answered questions, and our legislature struggles mightily with them. So next year, I'll give you a little precursor to my budget request. We're going to unveil a very large budget request that closes that $1 billion gap. Again, 3/4 of that's in special ed. It challenges the legislature to move a lot more money, new money, into education, particularly K-12 and early learning, to drive more resources into high poverty communities where we know when you do that and do it well with fidelity, you get better reading scores and better math scores. Our PhD students headed on to PhDs, they don't need more math. They get good counseling, good advising, and they know where they're going. It's our students in the very bottom who don't get those resources. So we know how to do this. You will also hear me talk about finally getting the state to think about the next phase of basic ed. Probably a policy that's going to outlast my tenure here, but I want to be clear about that. Every quarter century in this state, we've expanded basic ed as the economy has demanded it. My dad and mom finished 8th grade. They didn't go to high school. They could work in manufacturing, they can work in agriculture, they could start small businesses. The capital markets were still open to those people. That day's gone. So we got to ratchet it up. And that's why this state and this country moved to higher ed. And then we moved back down into kindergarten. And now we're talking, should every 3- and 4-year-old get a high quality preschool? From brain science that we know right here out of the UW, also go Cougs. It's obligatory, we have to do it. We know this stuff. And I think the next phase of Washington's excellence will be at least 2 years of college tuition free for kids. My vote is for the last 2 years, as I showed you. We get great volume to start. We do not get great completion. And when affordability is the issue, that's an opportunity for us to get a way better ROI for all the money we pile into K-12 in the first 2 years of college. Can you imagine, and these are the true numbers, spending between $250,000 and $300,000 per student to get them from age 5 to age 18 into age 20 and then they drop out and they end up with no degree, there's very little difference in that student's economic future than a student who barely graduates from high school. College completion is the ROI. It is the next phase of basic ed in our state. And with that, you should ask me very hard questions. And
Oh my
yes,
goodness.
the first answer is yes, we will repeat as
Okay.
Super Bowl champions. So that's great. That one's out of the
Okay.
way.
Thank you.
Yeah.
First of all, that was super compelling and a lot of information. So congrats on fitting that in. And it's funny. So,
All right. Good.
Chris, thanks for being here. Jeff Borick, past president, district governor. Two things real quick. One, smartphones in schools.
Yeah.
And then two, the chaos in the other Washington. How much are you being effective in holding the dam back with respect to what's going on the East Coast? Thank you.
Okay, let's take them in order. Our office, led again by the amazing Tennille Jeffrey Simmons, she and I and our executive, our chief executive, we put a lot of energy in what we can do on phones. And so we walked right up to our total policy authority, which is do a bunch of the research, grab the best evidence, put those models in front of school districts, and then say to them, we strongly urge you to change your policies to do something. And 3/4 of our school districts over the last year and a half have updated their technology policies to do something around limiting access to phones in classrooms. It's great. Can't mandate it yet. Legislature needs to do this. By next year, we will have ample evidence from a national survey that we're a part of that says the best way to do this. And we will be strongly supporting the elimination of phones in schools in the classroom. So I think we'll get there. We've got some legislators who don't agree with that. We've got families, by the way, who don't agree with that. They're the toughest to turn around when we talk to other states and districts. So like students go like, oh, this is the policy. Everyone's being treated the same. Students get over it in a week. And parents are like, but I need to get a hold of them for that dentist appointment. I want to call during third period. And some third period math teachers, please stop. Please stop. So that's that one. DC is a mess. They have done more damage in agencies outside of education. Thankfully, it's a relatively bipartisan thing. So, to congressional Republicans and Democrats, I thank them. They did not end up cutting programs. They did not merge programs. They did not do block grants. What they've done is dismantle the U.S. Department of Ed. They put it in about 6 other agencies. So what they've made it hard to do for a student who needs, say, civil rights enforcement, or when we're trying to get out a grant to help kids in career and tech ed, it is an entirely new cast of characters over there. None of them know how to issue grants because labor hasn't done this in K-12. DSHS hasn't done this in K-12. Health hasn't done this in K-12. So they've sown this idea that you don't need federal supports. And the truth is the feds should be really minimal in education, except civil rights enforcement. That's why that department was created. We're not asking them to write our learning standards. We do that. Or our credit requirements to graduate. The state board does that. Or funding, that's the legislature. But when you say kids with disabilities need full access, you better enforce it. When you say that we have policies on racial equity in this country and you mean it, you better enforce it. And what they've done is just walk away from that stuff. That's my biggest worry. Yeah.
First of all, thank you for being here. You've talked a lot about where education is today and where it's been. Tell us the implications of artificial intelligence on education in the next 5 years or so. I think we all approach it with some trepidation. Yeah. Is it an opportunity or a threat? In your opinion, is it an opportunity or a threat?
It is a perfect balance of both, which is an answer you expected. When we got into this guidance business 2 years ago on artificial intelligence, we did our look all across the country. We saw very few states guiding their school districts on the question. It was in its infancy. I mean, we're still only probably 28, 30 months into the revolution. It is like so many technologies going at light speed for students, and the adults are catching up. And anytime you have that dissonance, it's a threat because you don't have a framework for that. So what we guided our districts to do, we were one of the first or second states to come out with this, and we've given them 3 versions of guidance is, A, we're going to embrace it because it's a reality where we failed in social media and thought, oh, what's this Facebook thing? I can talk to grandma across the country. It's so innocent. We had no idea the algorithms. We had no idea the mental health impacts, the addiction. It is designed to get kids addicted like so many things. We know better. And when you know better, you got to do better. So we put out pretty specific guidance saying, we're going to lean into the reality of this, but where we failed in social media, we have to be better, which means you got to start thinking about how you're going to teach students the ethics of AI and how to use it. So we have a very simple concept we tried to share with the whole country, which is a little goofy, but it's HAIH. The human comes first, AI gets to do its work, and it's never done until the human gets to touch it again. Give you a classic example. Teacher says, I want a 5-page essay. I want you to write around the dung beetle of Central Africa and how it's changed, blah, blah, blah. That's done in 30 seconds now with AI. But the query, how did the student ask the question in a sophisticated enough way to know how to get that thing to produce something? So it starts with a student's imagination and understanding of their concepts. Let it produce its paper. They're going to do it anyways. It's not done until the student gets back into that paper, maybe in class, which is what's changing classroom experiences now. Now rewrite that in your own words. Now rewrite it taking a different perspective. And what if you had asked it this way? Using AI to think about critical thinking itself. That's the opportunity we have. But if there are still teachers saying, I'm going to make your grade about a paper you turn at the end of the term and I'm going to give it to you, that day is gone. So a lot of what we're doing in professional learning right now is saying maybe your classroom needs to flip back to where the work gets done in school, but you're going to evaluate students in your classroom. The blue book is coming back, my friends. Invest in the blue book. Because we're going to have to evaluate student learning real time now and not rely on them taking it home. Homework as a concept is completely being revolutionized. So it is a great opportunity if we teach into it ethically, and it will be a disaster if we pretend like it's just another thing, because it's not just another thing.
All right, sharp left turn. You mentioned briefly mental health.
Yes.
What impact is that having on those last 2 years completion? I'm
Yeah.
guessing it's a big deal.
I think it's bigger than that. I will be, oh boy, how do I do this without getting thrown out of here? First of all, I'm from Snohomish, not Seattle. I love Seattle. I supported as a legislator the legalization of marijuana. Like, where am I going with this? There's a lot we didn't know about mental health that we know today. The phone is an enormous part of that because of what comes with kids everywhere they go, and the fact that it's designed to find your fears and your rage and your anger. That's what human nature does. It clicks on it, and then the algorithms keep feeding you that stuff. So imagine an undeveloped brain doing that. Imagine an undeveloped brain where 30 or 40% of them are using the highest THC levels of marijuana in the history of this country. That is your middle school and high school experience right now, through vape devices, through the traditional methods that close your eyes, don't make eye contact. Some of you might have used when you were in high school, college. So I sort of see this as this combination of how do we take a whole new approach on student health, and mental health is a big part of that. And we can't just say, ban the phone, they're going to go home and use it for 6 hours. So it won't be enough to do what we do in the classroom. We have to have an honest conversation that a liberal state like ours has pushed us into revenue models that are less than good ideas for young people. It didn't come with enforcement. It didn't come with regulation on the industry to keep THC levels down. Kids are drinking a lot less alcohol based on our surveys with them. That's great. And their marijuana use is through the roof. So you can't decouple student health from mental health. We've built lots of regional systems around this. The legislature invests, and then when they have budget problems, they pull back on that stuff. But we got to think more holistically about this. So my last plug here is don't abandon your counties. And I understand most of you are from King County, and that is its own total beast. But the 39 counties are subagents of the state. So public health goes through them. Public defense goes through them. There's so much that goes through them, and they're being absolutely starved right now because the legislature controls their tax policy, but puts the spending obligations on the counties. So if there's another place for us in public policy to figure it out, it's how to give our counties the ability to get in this game. I can't address mental health in schools without an incredible cadre of mental health specialists, and we are all fighting each other to hire the same few people. So got to be regional models. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
I will stick around when you are fully loaded on cookies and answer your questions. I appreciate you, and thanks for the opportunity. Yeah. Yeah.
Shove this over here.
I need that once in a while, but I get ridiculed when I use it. So. Want me to take my
Well, no, you can stay right there. Thank you so much, Chris. As a thanks for your participation today, our club's foundation, the Seattle Rotary Service Foundation, has provided 600 servings of healthy produce to those in need through Harvest Against Hunger in your name.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you very
again for
much.
joining us.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
At this time, I would like to welcome Maddie Von Hoff and Lillian Sherman to the podium for an SRSF campaign update.
Oh, I don't mind that either. All right, we have to be fast. Hello, friends. When we stood before you on October 1st to kick off our SRSF campaign, we talked about the impact we could make. Today, I'm excited to show you about the impact we will have. We've come a long way in a few short months, but looking out at this room, I am just truly overwhelmed by your generosity that has really poured in, not just in dollars, but in the spirit of encouragement that you've shown each other. Before we celebrate the what, I must celebrate the who. And this campaign was a huge undertaking. So thank you to all of those. David Bobanek, who was our North Star. Can't thank you enough for your energy and enthusiasm. Vicki Oxley and Maddie Hoff, who've been the wisdom and relentless optimism. SRSF board, I see a lot of you in the room. Thank you so much for your energy and your willingness to engage your fellow Rotarians. President Jan, for the extra attention and inspiration that you've given this campaign some energy. Mary, always thank you for your willingness to lift all the heavy boxes beneath details. She really puts her heart into it. So now, here is the impact that your generosity has made. I'm thrilled to announce that as of this moment, 170 of you have stepped forward. And you did not just meet our $200,000 goal, you exceeded it. And together, we have raised $206,885. We have seen incredible momentum. Thank you to Carl Benke for creating that match at the beginning of it. I wanted to share that because of those matches, 3 things happened. We wanted to inspire new gifts, and we've had 16, a few more of that now, join in this mission for the very first time. We wanted to inspire giving beyond that minimum suggested gift, and more than 30 of you have reached higher, stretching your gifts to that $600 level. And we wanted to inspire more of you to join Pinkham and Skill giving level, which is $1,000 or more. And we've had 31 people increase their gifts and now stand with us at Pinkham and Skill level. So while we celebrate this public ending to the campaign, our work isn't finished until all of you have participated. We're currently at only 62%, which is a strong foundation, but we know we can be better. So we're officially turning the corner into our granting season, which Maddie will talk about in a minute. But there is a way that you can still participate. There's a QR code that's supposed to magically appear. There it is. You can do it right now. Venmo, we love it. If you use it, we're asking you 2 different things today, TRF and SRSF. Please put that in the memo, which one you're choosing to join. If you want to do both, tell us that. Now, we're turning the corner again. So Maddie's going to tell you a little bit about how your generosity turns into action.
So this might seem obvious, but it's really hit me recently that in just a couple of months, we are going to be giving away more than $200,000 to projects that support revitalizing downtown, address housing and homelessness, and food insecurity, promoting education, as we've talked about today, and saving lives around the world. And Lillian brought up, that 600 minimum suggested donation. Your $600 is not just money. It might mean shelter for 23 people tonight who are in some of the coldest, Seattle nights. It might be 170 meals for Seattle kids, or 3 clean cook stoves for women in Guatemala who are cooking over open flames. And by giving, 62% of you have already said yes, these are worthy causes. This work matters. It's what we do to be a good neighbor to Seattle, and it's what it means to be a Rotarian. And for the 38% of you who have not made a gift, I just don't believe it's because you don't believe in this work. So if you believe in this work, that these are worthy causes and Rotarians should be part of the solution, as Lillian said, we invite you to make your gift today. Giving is only the beginning. So like I said, in a couple months, we're going to be deciding where this $200,000 goes. And this is your chance to be a part of the process and see firsthand how we're going to take these dollars and transfer them into meaningful change. And if you've ever wondered, well, I don't know where the money goes, or I wish it would go here instead, then I invite you to answer that question by joining a grant scoring committee where you can be part of that process. No experience is needed, and I say that as somebody who scored my first grants on a Seattle 4 Rotary committee. I'm only looking for a willingness to step forward. So if you care about these funds and where they go and want to help shape these decisions, I saw Jevin in the back. Jevin, can you raise your hand? You're going to talk to Jevin for local. You're going to talk to me for international. And we so appreciate, we invite you to join us in this process, help make it better, share your ideas, and be part of the impact you helped create. Thanks.
Thank you, Lillian, and thank you, Maddie. You guys do great work. And thanks again to REB Enterprises and Carl Benke for their meeting support. I want to thank Bloodworks Northwest and the Westland Morse Group with Baird Private Wealth Management for their meeting and sponsorship support. Before Nicole comes up, I have a special announcement. Leadership Tomorrow is currently seeking its applicants for the next class. That would be the 2027 LT Impact class. As a member of Seattle 4, all of you are invited to nominate leaders you think are ready to strengthen their skills, knowledge of the region, and knowledge of our community. Ideal candidates have 10 plus years of experience. They have a demonstrated commitment to community engagement and a curiosity to broaden their perspective. If you know any good candidates, or you might want to apply yourself, please get in touch with our member, Bindia Patel. Stand up or wave. There she is. Or you can visit the Leadership Tomorrow website. The deadline for nominations, for your nominations of candidates, is March 31st. Nicole?
It's a good announcement. So we've had a lot of Leadership Tomorrow alumni in here and in presenting, so that's the first ad right there. Okay, so for announcements, last time I did mention that we had a Seahawks Super Bowl game, so I forgot to put, were all of you cheering? Are we excited? Yes, okay. Sorry. Next we have the Taproot. Thank you. So many of you went. Thank you. I think John, where is he at? He did a good job. Both Johns, guilt shaming us, but then we got there and everyone loved it. So thank you for Taproot and helping us for a very important cause about bullying in our schools. So Wednesday, February 25th, we have a Zoom-only meeting, so you can stay at home if you'd like. It'll be Voices from the Schools panel discussion moderated by Eric Corman. The next Wednesday, we'll be back here March 4th at the WAC with Seattle Center Foundation Executive Director Rob Johnson, and this will be part of Neighborhoods and Communities Month. Wednesday, March 18th, we have a lunch meeting still here at the WAC with Horizon Air's CEO Andy Schneider. And then Wednesday, March 25th, we have two things. If you can handle it, we have our Zoom-only meeting with featuring real estate executive Philip, Pizzarzello. Okay, at 12:30. And then later that night, we have a free gathering, a happy hour at the Columbia Tower Club. And you can come from 5:30 to 7:30, no cost. There's a cash bar, and it's at the Columbia Tower, which is always fun. And there is a $10 parking, which should attract you. We already had the announcement to join the reviewing of these grants, so just another plug for that. All right. Thank you. Yeah.
So I was never a very good student. In fact, had it not been for my love of the arts, and dance in particular, I'm not sure if I would have made it out of high school. The classroom was never where I felt successful, but dance was. That was where I found my belonging, discipline, confidence, and a teacher who saw whatever talent I may have possessed. For me, education was not about academics. It was about finding friends and perfecting my craft. The issues that face K through 12 education today are so much more complicated. Educators are navigating academic recovery, mental health, technology and AI, funding debates, safety concerns, political polarization, and the very, very real pressure of preparing students for a world that is changing faster than any of us could have imagined. And yet, At its core, the mission has not changed. Every child still needs someone who believes in them. Every student needs a place where they can discover what it is that sparks their curiosity. And every community still depends on strong public schools as the foundation of opportunity, workforce development, civic engagement, and economic vitality. For some students, it might be math or science. For others, it's a career in technical education. For some of us, a few, it might be the arts, or maybe it's the football field, or a teacher who simply refused to give up on us. Healthy communities are not built overnight. It's built classroom by classroom, relationship by relationship, year after year. Superintendent Reykdal, thank you for taking on work that is both incredibly complex and very consequential. And thank you for reminding us that the future of our state is sitting in classrooms right now, watching how we lead, how we support, and how we invest. As Rotarians, we all understand something about long-term investment. Think about polio. Education might be the most important investment we make. Thank you again, Chris, and thank you all for joining us. Next week, I hope I see you on Zoom when we will host a discussion moderated by Eric with those working directly in the Seattle Public Schools. We are adjourned.